tension, based on real events. My name is Aiden, from the little ranch town of Dry Creek, Montana. We have an old, uneasy story that's been passed down in my family. My father told it to me, and his father told it to him. My grandfather, Hank Whitlow, was a hard man who ran cattle and knew every game trail between the cottonwoods and the bluffs. One July evening, when he was about 50, he was riding home from the range and decided to cool off in the Wind River. The air was oven hot and the water was knife cold. He stripped to his shirt, waded in to his waist, and froze. Sitting in the reeds a few yards away was something. At first it looked like a man, but the face was too long, the teeth too small and square, and a tight goat's beard hung from its chin like black wire. Its eyes shone like an animal's in a flashlight beam. It stared straight at him and laughed through its teeth, a thin, needling sound. Grandpa didn't spook. He lunged, grabbed that beard with a rancher's grip, and tore it out. The thing whistled like a kettle. The river puckered inward without making a ripple, and it slid under as if the water swallowed it whole. Grandpa stuffed the dark tuft into a tobacco tin, snapped it shut, and rode home. That night at 3:03 a.m., the house woke to a sound like weeping under the eaves. Two voices braided together, one low and one child thin, pleading, "Give it back." Hoof scrapes ticked along the roof. The door latch lifted and set itself down twice. The milk cows bunched in the far corner of the corral and wouldn't face the house. The dog wouldn't step onto the porch. A wet copper smell crept through the rooms. In the morning, a hair-fine line of black algae traced the threshold, and backward hoofprints stopped at the stoop without any approaching trail. It went on like that for nights. Whispers from the chimney, river water dripping from the rafters with a sky clear as glass. My grandmother finally said, "Hank, give it back. It isn't letting us sleep. It isn't letting itself sleep." Grandpa didn't argue. He went to the shed, opened the tobacco tin, and found the beard still damp and warm, as if it had never left flesh. The lamps dimmed for a heartbeat. He walked to the fence line, set the tin on a post, and knocked 3 times into the dark. Everything outside held its breath. "You can have it," he said. "But hear me, I spared you once. There won't be a second." He carried the tin to the river and let the beard go. Something brushed his chest, a flat, cold, silted palm, and the frogs along the bank went silent all at once. For a blink, the Wind River's surface seemed to run backward, then smoothed like nothing had happened. After that, the house settled. Once a month, near first frost, a low whimper would pass under the shingles and fade. Grandpa kept a single black hair tied above the door as a reminder and never swam alone again. In our family, we still mind the old rule. If the gate knocks exactly 3 times, we don't answer. And if the river ever laughs through its teeth, you leave it what it asks for and go home before 3:03. Next scary story. My grandmother told me this in a whisper, the way you tell a curse you don't want waking up. It happened in the early 1990s on the east side of Flint, Michigan. Her neighbor, Mina, had lost her husband Omar in a factory accident. For 2 months she barely left the house, crying until her voice went thin, sleeping in his work shirt, plates untouched. Then, one night at exactly 8 p.m, someone knocked. Mina opened the door and froze. Omar stood there, alive, dust on his boots, lunch pail in hand. He said he'd just got off shift, kissed her forehead, and asked what was for dinner. The kitchen clock stalled at 8 o'clock and wouldn't tick again until morning. Mina believed, who wouldn't, and held him like waking from a nightmare. At dawn, he left for work again. An hour later, Mina's mother arrived and said, "Pack a bag and come with me. You can't stay here alone." Mina smiled through tears. "I'm not alone." Omar came home. Her mother swallowed hard. "Daughter, he's been dead 2 months." That evening, 8 o'clock sharp, the knocking returned, 3 polite taps, as if from a gloved hand. Mina ran to the door, but her mother caught her wrist. "Let me look first." She drew the chain and cracked it an inch. What stood on the porch wore Omar's face perfectly. Same tired smile, same scar under the eye, but everything below the coat was wrong. The coat hem hung stiff in air with no wind. The shadow lagged half a beat, and where there should have been boots, the porch boards showed bare crescents, like backward hoofprints. When it spoke, the voice arrived a heartbeat early, then the mouth moved to catch up. Mina, enchanted, whispered, "See? It's him." The thing tilted its head and breathed a smell of wet soil and hot iron into the gap. At first light, Mina's mother drove to Dearborn and spoke with an imam. He listened, frowned, and said, "This is not your son-in-law. Read these verses 3 times before the roosters crow, and do not open the door at 8. Sit your daughter before a mirror. Comb her hair over a bowl of water and salt. If a clump falls heavy as mud, you'll know who's calling her." That night they set a chair, a mirror, and the bowl. 8 o'clock came. The hall grew cold. The peephole fogged from the inside. Something traced backward letters in the condensation on the mirror, "Mine," and the chain lifted and settled by itself. As Mina's mother combed, long black strands slid down, and one clump hit the water with a wet thud, bleeding brown silt like grave dirt. Outside, the not-quite voice whispered from the crack, "Open, wife." Mina's mother recited without stopping. The knock slowed, then scraped, then fell silent. Through the peephole the mask slipped. A jaw too wide, gums gray, and below the coat shag of goat hair bristling over split, black hooves. It leaned close until the glass bowed inward, then withdrew. On the porch they found 3 ash lines across the threshold and a ring of backward hoofprints that began and ended at the doormat. Mina woke as if from a fever, tasting dirt. After that, the 8 o'clock knock never came again. But on the anniversary, the kitchen clock still hesitates at 8 o'clock. The hallway air smells faintly of damp earth, and nobody in that house opens a door after dark when the first knock is too polite. Next scary story. My grandfather always said, "After dark, the plains have their own rules." Then he'd tell this story about his friend Beck Calloway. One hot night in 1960, Beck was riding home across the Llano Estacado between Muleshoe, Texas, and Clovis, New Mexico. No campfires, no fences. Just dry grass hissing in the wind and stars so close they felt like gravel. He had about 15 miles left when, in the emptiest stretch, he saw a single warm lantern hanging in the dark and heard music, fiddle and laughter, like a wedding in full swing. Beck knew every windmill and section rode out there. There'd never been a homestead on that patch, but curiosity beat caution. He rode closer and found a clearing that shouldn't exist. Long tables laid with enamel plates, jars of sweet tea, a low adobe house lit from within, and people he recognized. His cousin Walt, his Aunt Lila, old Mr. Grady from church, smiling, waving him in. His horse balked and blew hard without steam, whites of the eyes showing. The house's shadow leaned toward the lantern instead of away. Someone called, "Beck, get down, you must be hungry." And the voice arrived a half beat before the mouth moved. He dismounted anyway. A man tied his reins to a mesquite with a neat little knot that Beck couldn't untie later, and the gelding started to tremble like it had run all night, though its hooves never shifted. Inside, the stove was cold, but the stovepipe ticked like a clock with no hands. A wall clock read 12:04 and wouldn't budge. Family photos on a shelf sat facing. They set him a bowl of stew and coffee that smelled right until it didn't, wet iron and pond mud under the steam. The candle flame leaned toward him as if the room were inhaling. Laughter rolled through the house from 2 places at once, and when a fiddle scraped 3 notes, the last note played backward. Beck lifted the bowl, blinked, and the party went out like a blown match. He stood alone in a roofless ruin, plaster cracked, dust drifting upward into the night. In his hands, not a bowl, but a warm, sticky clump, horse dung mixed with black silt that bled between his fingers. Outside, 3 polite knocks tapped the lintel. Voices in his aunt's and cousin's timbers called his full name with the stresses a little wrong. Around the door lay a ring of fine ash and a trace of backward hoofprints that began and ended at the threshold. His gelding still tied there looked lathered, ribs heaving, yet hadn't moved an inch. He tore the reins free, swung up, and didn't look back. The lantern light followed, never smaller, just farther and level with his eye, like it slid beside him. His watch stalled at 3:03, then jumped. The wind carried a faint cheer as if a toast had failed. When he finally reached the section road and the first yard light, the glow peeled off and sank into the salt grass. After that night, Beck told anyone who'd listen, if a warm light and familiar voices call you on the prairie, don't go, no matter whose face you recognize. Don't eat, don't drink, don't tie your horse, and if someone knocks too politely behind you, keep riding. Because out there, some weddings aren't for the living and they count guests by name. Thanks for watching until the next scary stories.